This video is intended as a response to The Absurdity of Life Without God, which was posted by Telemantros. Telemantros claims that without God, life has no significance, value, or purpose, and that as a result, atheists will lead either an inconsistent or unhappy life. I have to say that I was a little amused by this conclusion, as I have had a happy and fulfilling life thus far, in spite of the absence of any book as the incontrovertible source of my morality. Perhaps the charge is that I have been inconsistent, but here I would argue that the only inconsistency is that I reject most of the arguments that Telemantros puts forth. Before answering Telemantros' claims point by point, I should note an underlying theme that I disagree with. This is the idea that because it is desirable to believe in God, we should do so. Telemantros uses this line of reasoning frequently throughout his video. While I am not convinced of the premise, I am certainly opposed to the conclusion. The idea that we can change what we believe by force of will requires a level of intellectual dishonesty that I am not comfortable with. This sort of argument, typified by Pascal's wager, may be used by those who do not believe to look further in the hope of finding that they are wrong, but it cannot in any way be used as a basis of belief. On a less ennobling level, the argument can also be used to prevent a believer honestly examining their own faith due to the risk of disillusionment. The main argument of Telemantros was described as a lack of significance, value, and purpose without God. Let's look at these one by one. How significant can a life without God be? I'm reminded of the total perspective vortex in Douglas Adams' book Life, the Universe and Everything. It shows people how insignificant they are in the cosmic scale of things by displaying to its victim the entire unimaginable infinity of the universe with a very tiny marker that says, "You are here," which points to a microscopic dot on a microscopic dot. This stark revelation is so shattering to the ego that it cannot recover. In a galaxy billions of light years across, the inhabitants on this tiny blue dot are not significant at all, in terms of total volume if nothing else. Then there is time. Telemantros points out that given that all of our actions will eventually cease to have repercussions in the infinity of time, at some point it will be like we never existed at all. My approach is to ask why we need to be significant on a cosmic scale, and why our actions need to have repercussions that are felt for eternity. We are, for the most part, significant to those who are significant to us. We can have an effect proportional to our size in the universe. To give joy to other creatures who will value it, and to share ideas that may perchance outlive us, are gifts that we should appreciate. Our lives have value because we can affect the things around us which we value. The philosophy which has in it no afterlife must see life as a precious gift to be savoured rather than an exercise in futility. To put it in a Christian context, imagine the following hypothetical scenario. God appears before you and explains that there has been a battle for the soul of a person you love dearly. As a result of this, the person's soul will be destroyed irretrievably upon death. How would you respond to this news? Would you give up on your loved one because their life no longer has any ultimate meaning? Or would their life suddenly become so much more precious because it is so fleeting? I will concede that our lives are so brief they are not worth an infinite amount of effort. They are, however, each worth a lifetime's dedication. To demand that the legacy of our lives should never die shows a distinct lack of proportion. The next point is the issue of value. Telemantros claims that an atheistic worldview means our destiny is unrelated to our behaviour. I believe this to be wrong at the most fundamental level. Our own actions shape who we become. If we wish to become a better person, then it is through our actions that we make this come to pass. Acting solely in our own short-term interests leads to self-loathing. Diverse cultures have a surprising uniformity in their understanding of moral values. Murder is universally frowned upon, although killing is occasionally condoned under certain circumstances. Incest is a universal taboo outside royalty. People also generally believe that we should do what we can in order to help another. It is hard to find a religion that is not based on some form of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have done unto you. Certainly a culture's own values have a bearing on how this principle is applied, and to whom. But the same can be said for the interpretation of any holy book, whose adherents' views on things such as slavery may change over time. Cultural practice also played a big role in deciding which books were to be included in the New Testament. Telemantros' description of what may be permitted without a god is ironic given the stories of the Old Testament. In particular, I was surprised by the fact that he cited genocide as a crime that may be permitted without a lawgiver God. Consider the following passage from 1 Samuel 15. Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. What is a Christian's reaction to this? I would hope that any Christian would feel uncomfortable about the implications and try to find a reason why this example should not be taken as a guide to their own actions. In short, rather than just believing in the book, they would try to find an interpretation that felt right to them. They would appeal to the natural values present in all of us as their underlying guide to find what is right. Now, lest anyone think that I am taking an isolated example, there are a number of other passages that may be followed up. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think, just by looking at it, that the Bible promotes genocide more often than it condemns homosexuality. The final point to be addressed is that of purpose or reason. The desire to say that we must have a purpose for being here is something I've never been able to fully understand. I think it's rooted in the desire for life to have an instruction manual. The world would be so much easier if somebody told us what we were meant to be doing. Even if we weren't told exactly what it is, I suppose it'd be nice to know that there was a prize at the end. Desirable as this may be, the vast majority of atheists manage to do without an end goal and not collapse into an existential funk. Life is instead a precious chance to experience a small corner of the universe. Consider the extraordinary luck that you were born. To then demand a payoff at the end requires enormous hubris. A sunset has no purpose, a snowflake structure has no purpose, the sound of my 3-year-old daughter squealing with delight as I tickle her has no purpose, yet all of these things I enjoy to a greater or lesser extent. My life has purpose, it merely lacks destiny. I'm lucky to have been born. I'm even more lucky to have been raised in a place where I've been able to appreciate life. I see no evidence of God, but if there is a God who is responsible for my life, he or she has my full gratitude. But in the end, even without the presence of a creator in my life, I find I can live my life with significance, value and purpose. All of these are done on a human scale, and for all that it might be desirable to be part of something even greater, an understanding of one's own place in the universe is rewarding, if a little humbling. The atheistic view of life is a little like doing a university course without receiving a mark at the end. On a superficial level, that may seem pointless, but the value we get from any experience is in the broadening of our own minds. Judgment from an external source is merely confirmation, which is nice, but hardly necessary.